Hey listeners, it's Paul Andriola here. Why not join our community at Small Cap Discoveries, where we offer our members direct access to some of the best microcap investment opportunities available. Our members are getting access to premium microcap financings, research reports, and direct access to management. Sign up today at www.smallcapdiscoveries.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. Today on our call, we have the CEO, Gordon Deans from Aurora Solar Technologies. Aurora Solar trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ACU and on the OTC under AACTF. The company is currently trading at 9.5 cents with roughly 145 million shares outstanding, or about a $14 million market cap. I'd now like to hand it over to Paul Andriola.
Great. Thanks a lot, Trevor. Great to have Gordon back with us. Aurora Solar, clearly a company that we know very well. And you guys are in the midst of closing a significant acquisition for you guys. So I thought it was quite timely to get you back in and tell us about this acquisition. But before we do that, why don't you just refresh everybody's memory and tell us what Aurora Solar is all about?
So what we do is we provide software and hardware products for increasing the yield and for the quality control and throughput maximization in solar cell manufacturing. So our market is primarily in Southeast Asia, mainly China right now. And our products are used at various steps in the manufacturing processes in order to get the most out of their manufacturing equipment and the materials that they're working with to turn into solar cells.
Fantastic. So clearly this BT acquisition, BT Imaging, I think it's called. It's a big deal for you guys. Why don't you tell us all about it, and we can follow up with some questions.
So I'll tell you a little bit about BT Imaging and what it is that they do, and then I'll move on. First, what I'd like to do is just give a little bit of a refresher for folks on the Aurora business and the overall market as well. So Trevor, if you could go to the next slide. And with that, this is your eye test to see how your eyesight is. But for those of you that don't want to really read the whole thing, you can see it on the Aurora website. Okay, Trevor, next one. So for those of you that are not familiar with the solar energy market, it's really one of the two big ones in renewable energy, the other one being wind. And this is an industry that started off as, niche applications in off-grid locations and satellites and so forth to power them, but now is a very, very large industry and continuing to grow at a really rapid pace. In terms of electrical generating capacity, it grows about 25% a year. In terms of monetary value, with that growth comes, making the per watt costs cheaper and cheaper. So that's about a 20% growth a year in terms of actual dollar value in the industry. And with that growth, of course, comes a lot of capital expenditures and gives us an attractive addressable market of about $600 million a year. We don't address the whole market, but with this acquisition, we'll be addressing more of that. And M&A as well as organic developments are part of our strategy. So I can assure you that this acquisition is really only the starting point for us as we move ahead into growing our footprint and our revenue within this market. Trevor, can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, so we have played in the, just hang on one second. We've played in the solar cell part of the value chain up to this point in time. So if you look at this diagram, you'll see that you start with purified silicon, and it's cast in ingots. Then those are sawn into these wafers you see in the middle of the slide. They're made into solar cells, which is where our products play currently. And then the solar cells are wired together to make solar panels or modules. I will come back to this value chain later on when I talk a little bit about where the acquisition gets us in this. But most of what I'm going to be talking about as we look ahead is focused on the solar cell part of the value chain. Trevor, next, please. So in all the product manufacturing, but particularly in solar cells, the industry suffers from a gross margin problem. Basically, the raw materials are expensive. There's a lot of pricing power upstream in the chain to market, and the selling prices are very competitive. There's been about a 10% decline every year in the per watt selling price of solar cells and solar modules or panels as well. So there's relentless price competition. And because of the relative immaturity of this industry, they've grown their capacity and the size of their manufacturing plants, but they're still in the process of really starting to adopt more modern techniques that have been the standard in other industries for making sure that your plants are being as effective as possible. So if you think about pulp and paper or semiconductors, they've been around much longer, and they've adopted the kinds of tools and techniques that we're bringing to this industry. So we're following a well-trodden path in this sense, but we're breaking new ground within this young industry. The main thing here is that up to this point in time, many of the means to be able to monitor and control what's going on in the manufacturing plants have been largely manual in nature, where the engineers and the operators will look at individual pieces of equipment and also at the testers that qualify the products at the end of the lines, make assumptions or run manual special runs of test material in order to isolate and track down problems. And this, as the plants scale from tens of pieces of equipment to hundreds, is just not sustainable anymore. Okay, next slide, please. So what our solution is, number one, to be in the right place at the right time. But first of all, you need to collect data, and you need to collect the right data in the right places at the right time in the manufacturing plants. So that's measuring. What this data does is this then feeds together into putting it into context, and that's visualization. So that tells you not just a number from a measurement instrument, but what it relates to in terms of which piece of equipment, in what section of that equipment, if it's, say, a large furnace for doing heat treatment, and also gives you timelines of what's happening so that you can track fluctuations in the equipment as well. And then finally, the last step is then to use that visualized data, so it's now information and it's actionable, to take control actions. So these are things to be able to fix problems when they arise, or even to anticipate them and prevent them from happening in the first place by proactive maintenance. To be able to make adjustments in settings on a batch-by-batch basis in the processes, and also to be able to report to other departments and to management the results of all of these control actions, so that longer-term measures such as changes in different recipes for processing and also design within the plant can be taken into account in terms of continuous improvement exercises. So within that, we have currently, before the acquisition, we have our DM series of measurement systems, which are installed in many major manufacturing plants for solar cells. And we also have our emerging Insight plant analytics and control system, which is finishing up, getting close to finishing up an evaluation with a lead customer in China, a tier 2 manufacturer. And we also are in the process of negotiating a trial, which we would expect to lead to commercial business with the top supplier or shipper of solar cells and solar modules in the world as well, at one of their sites where we have recently installed our DM measurement systems as well. So Insight is really the main context as I move forward with respect to how we bring all our products together and provide this total solution. All right, next slide, please. So what Insight does is when you think about running any kind of a manufacturing operation, what you're looking for is to be able to bring the data together and to put it in the context of the overall plant, not just the pieces of equipment, but also how the pieces of equipment are interacting with each other. So that's the plant-wide performance monitoring that you see in the top left-hand side here. Then when you're doing that, it's the ability to pick out events or trends and isolate where they are and what their timelines are as well. That is important, particularly in typical situations in solar cell manufacturing, where many plants will use different sources of material, with the raw material from time to time, and they will also be running different recipes from time to time in different process steps as well. So being able to have a history of this and be able to detect the events in real time, or as close to real time as possible, is very important to get the most out of your manufacturing lines. And then the rest on the bottom here, I've already talked about these sorts of things already. So I think in the interest of time, that goes without saying, but these are basic parts of a system that provide a value to the customer in terms of getting the most out of their plants. So what this is a dashboard, and I want everyone to keep that in mind. Is it's a dashboard for running the plant and getting the most throughput and the highest quality on a widget by widget basis out of the plant. So what you're seeing here is a dashboard. To feed the dashboard, you need instruments. Just like in a car, you've got an odometer, you've got a speedometer, you've got a tachometer, gas gauge. You need all those pieces of the equivalent pieces of data coming into Insight in order to provide value for it in terms of what it gives to the customers in actionable intelligence. Next slide, please. So with that, having established the context, what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about what BT Imaging does and what they're bringing into that system of dashboard and intelligence or information sources to feed the dashboard Insight. BT Imaging has been around a bit longer than Aurora, and I've known of this company since I started Aurora. They are a spin out from the University of New South Wales in Australia. And that university is the premier institution in the world for graduating people who are now in senior engineering and management positions within solar companies around the world. The current mainstream cell technologies that are being manufactured were invented by the leader of the School of Photovoltaics at the University of New South Wales. So BT Imaging, what they do is they have equipment that senses certain attributes within the material, the silicon ingots and wafers, and also partially finished cells, and also the fully finished cells, and the dynamics of how that material behaves when it's struck by sunlight that complements the measurement instruments we have, which measure the results of one of the specific and critical processes in cell manufacturing. And they're not a competitor, they're a complementary company. They have established the leading brand in this kind of sensing, and they have installations around the world in both R&D and also production of their systems for doing quality checks and material inspection and qualification as well. So bringing in the information that the BT Imaging products provide into our Insight dashboard will allow us to go a step further in the type of capabilities that we can provide as value-added features above and beyond the basic capabilities in Insight. So therefore adding the potential for increased higher tiers and subscriptions and increased revenue. And also Insight will provide BT Imaging, as it's consolidated with Aurora, with the means to be able to be part of that ecosystem and have an extra added value in terms of being able to withstand competition and maintain pricing power as well. So I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Now, another thing I want to say is, and I will also get into this in a further slide, is BT Imaging as a standalone business is profitable, generates cash, and has a footprint with wide geographical as well as value chain and product lifecycle diversity within it. So for us, this is really great because what it does is it not just gives us additional revenue and profit, but also gives us a lowered risk profile for cyclicality in the industry, and also, you know, geographical aspects of the industry as well. Okay, next slide, please. All right, I've pretty much described this already, but just to, you know, for those of you that are visual thinkers, I'll put it in context this way. Right now, today, the Insight system, as you see it at the center there as a dashboard, relies on the WaveLabs tester, which you can see, it's the orange device, these are installed in the ends of the production lines, and they test every single finished solar cell and provide electrical data about how it's performing. So we mine that data, and we use tracking information about the raw material in the plant to be able to assign performance to all the different machinery in the plant. So that's the basic functionality of Insight. And with that, there's a number of applications for maintenance scheduling and troubleshooting, optimization of recipes, that sort of thing that go on top of that. As we move forward with Insight, we bring in other data sources. So that's our own instruments, as you can see on the top left-hand side, and also the BT imaging instruments that you can see on the bottom left-hand side. So what this does is that's where you start to get the increased value in Insight, because with the starting point, the WaveLabs testers and also their competition, we're agnostic to that. And the wafer tracking, we can say, here's how this machine has been performing, and how it compares to its peers, and if there's any issues with it. So we've got basically when and where, but we don't have why as much. So the other data sources allow us to provide the engineers with the ability to dive into more deep understandings of how they're and why their tools are performing certain ways, and therefore perform optimization and fine-tuning of the tools more automatically, more quickly. And that's the roadmap for how we're going to bring in the BT imaging products and also our other products as well into Insight. And the starting point is to start with the basic system, establish our footprint in the market, basically get our pricing established at the most fundamental level, the minimum viable product level, and then have pricing power both for the individual products as they're part of this system, and also for the added value Insight features as well as we roll them out. So that's just a more visual view of the same sort of stuff that I described before. All right, next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk specifically about the acquisition. So there's three things that this brings to the company that I'm really, really excited about. Number one, the run rate of revenue at BT Imaging is roughly 10 million Canadian dollars per year at the moment. And they have a pipeline and an order book that looks to be sustaining that at least, if not growing it. So it's a very big addition. You know, we've had challenges the last while with respect to COVID, and you know, the ability to be close to our customers and so forth. That's not stopped us. We've continued to work on rolling out Insight, for example, and you know, we've just recently done some installations of more installations of the DM measurement systems. But what BT Imaging brings to us is a big leap forward in revenue and profit as well. The other thing I can say is that because of NDAs, I can't be specific about the treasury and that and so forth, but very robust treasury with a high free cash component in it. And so basically we've got not just the revenue base to work with, but also the ability to invest and continue to build that just on the basis of BT Imaging's business alone. The other thing that it brings to us, the second one, go 2 slides ahead, please, Trevor, is the broadened market. So right now, Aurora plays into the cell manufacturing part of that value chain I showed you earlier, and that's replicated in the bar chart on the left side. BT Imaging products are sold into cell manufacturing, but even more so, they're sold into the wafering, which is the raw material used for cell making, and also the ingoting, which is shown here as polysilicon on this. So basically, we're tripling our addressable market. The other aspect where we're broadening things out is that their flagship product is actually an R&D tool that's installed in all major laboratories around the world. And this is an evergreen tool. It needs to be constantly upgraded as the cell technologies change and things like footprint of the solar cell size, the nature of the solar cell material itself in terms of its purity and everything else changes. So there's an ongoing robust business right at the beginning of the R&D. And this is something that we've never really been involved in, and that only gives you revenue at a different part in the life cycle, but it also gives you a foot in the door with these companies before they even start building their volume manufacturing plants where we play. So basically, it's getting us involved in relationships with customers and any new technologies or any new plant builds they're doing early on, so that we can get designed in at that stage. They also have products that sit in test facilities and qualification facilities and in the actual production lines as well. So right through the product life cycle. So now we're suddenly expanding in that aspect. And finally, geography. We sell into Asia Pacific. BT Imaging sells into the same places, but also North America and also Europe as well. So, and this is an area that we want to keep a strong eye in, because new cell technology called heterojunction technology, we're starting to see more and more investment in that in both North America and in Europe. And going back to my earlier comment about being placed in the early stages of that development, we want to capitalize on that for our Insight product as these plants get built and scaled up. So next slide, please. The last one is competitive power. With Insight, the intention has always been with that product as a dashboard or a platform is to make it so that we create a stickiness or a lock-in with the customers. So if we were just selling Insight on its own, we would say, oh, it can work with any data source with, from any supplier. But where you really have the great opportunity, and where we're being copycats of companies like KLA, Honeywell, and others, is when you say, you can have this product, Insight, it's your dashboard, it's your day-to-day tool for managing your plant, and we also provide the data sources. So you either get the data from our sources, or you can't use it within Insight, or you're using it in a less capable way. So this is much like the sort of lock-in and stickiness that consumer companies like Apple does. But it's also time-honored, as I said, with these other control systems and instrumentation companies in other industries. And even in my past days when I started my career at Nortel Networks, we did the same thing with our products when we sold them to telecom companies, was we made them so they were sticky. We were constantly upgrading them and making them work together better than it would work with other products. And that paid off in terms of pricing power, being able to create moats or barriers to competitive entry, which is especially important in hotly competitive markets like Southeast Asia and China. So we've already got some activities that we're going to start on day one with respect to integrating the BT imaging products and establishing that as well. So this is part of our overall strategy. We're not stopping with just the acquisition of BT imaging to create a sticky ecosystem that makes it so that people keep coming back to us for more. Okay, next slide. So this chart was prepared for us by Stifel, who did our last broker raise a bit over a year ago. And what I want to show here is that we're not just following in the footsteps of large, very well-established players like Honeywell, but we're also doing something that's analogous to what was done over the years at Photon Control, which was acquired about a year ago by MKS Instruments, who's the primary competitor to KLA in the semiconductor industry. So number one, it's focusing on where you see a gap in the market and where you can make a difference and create a basis or a platform for consolidation within the industry. And that's the insight introduction, which is, as you can see here, is item number one on the stock price chart for Photon Control. And then following more closely than in the case of this timeline, is the BT imaging acquisition, which gives us a big leg up in starting to execute on that overall system strategy. And then also as we move forward over the coming months and next 2 years or so, is to build in more value-added features into the Insight platform to create more and more of that stickiness, and to leverage the data that's being provided by the instruments that we interact with, BT imaging instruments, the Wave Labs instruments, which is a partnership, and our own DM instruments as well in the production line. So, ultimately, I'm not saying that we're looking to get acquired anytime in the near future, but this is a time-honored way to basically build value and make the company attractive in the market as well. So we're also following this kind of a path. So this is a good example of, for Photon Control, a successful focusing of the company after a period of time, and then acting on that focus in order to build up a product line and a market position that creates great value for them. Okay, next slide, please. So as you know, we're closing a financing to support the acquisition. It's mainly shares, but there's a cash component as well. So that's the purpose of the financing. It's a small financing. Done at, I have to say, not the most ideal time in the market. We've been waiting to see if there would be some supernova of the sun or something as well, just to spice things up, but that's not come to pass. But I think regardless of the current state of the market, the question is what's the company doing, and how's it positioned, and how's it going to move forward? So I would put to you that with the financing, or even just buying in the open market, there are some strong investment pluses with the Aurora shares, particularly as we move forward on this acquisition. The market we're addressing remains large. It's getting larger. It's growing rapidly. That growth just is continuing and even getting even more rapid. We continue to leverage our presence in the largest solar market in the world, China, and also Southeast Asia. We've moved forward big steps over the last few months with Insight. We haven't said much about it, but behind the scenes, there's been a lot going on. And between that and the BT imaging acquisition, this is truly a transformational time for the company. The team, including the BT imaging team, but the Aurora team on its own is also recognized in the industry and respected. And I got to give some kudos to people on the board, particularly Kevin Dodds, who I've worked closely with in shepherding the acquisition forward, and also in basically the strategy and setting up the company for success as we move forward in this pretty fast-moving industry. So I like to close just by saying, just so that everyone knows, we are looking to close the financing and the acquisition on Thursday. So, you know, it's pretty close to being done. Pretty excited about that. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. So yeah, anybody who's listening, please use the chat function. If you've got a question you'd like me to ask Gordon, use the chat function, type it out, and then I'll do my best to make sure Gordon has a chance to answer it. You mentioned the financing, Gordon, but you didn't mention the terms. Can you tell us about the terms of the financing you're raising right now?
So it's 10 cents a share, a unit, I should say. And one unit is one share and one warrant, one full warrant at 20 cents. The warrant expires after a year. Now, I might point out that the financing, the valuation on Aurora shares and the financing itself is 20 cents. We'd established that a while ago before the current market deterioration was occurring. And we successfully made the case to the BTI shareholders that if their company was a public company, it would be affected in the same way that our share price has been. So we held the line on the 20 cents. So we've established the warrant at that price, and it's good for a year. That's pretty much it.
Gotcha. So to be clear, what you're saying is that the sort of the terms of the acquisition, the purchase price of the acquisition was in, I think it's 62 or 64 million shares at 20 cents. That's what you're saying, right?
Plus a 1.9 million cash component.
Plus the cash component that you're raising the money for right now. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, and just to be clear for everyone who's listening, this is for accredited investors only. So if you're a accredited investor, you can participate in this financing. If not, your recourse is just to buy in the market. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, we do have a couple questions here. Claude here asked, did you have a patent on all? I'm assuming he's saying, do you have patent on any of the products you have, and does BT have patents on any of their products?
So the answer is yes. We've got patents on all the visible elements of our products. Insight as a software product has no patents. It's all trade secrets because, frankly, patents are useless in China. In most of Asia. Venture capitalists love patents, but there's patent violations left, right, and center around the world. So the main thing is to make sure that you have a nuanced and comprehensive intellectual property protection strategy. So things you can see and touch, you patent. And BT Imaging has 50 patents, over 50 actually.
Oh, okay.
We have, I'd say, at this point, depending on how you count them, somewhere between 5 and 10, and that's on the DM hardware. But most of the smarts in our products are in firmware and software.
So in taking over BT, obviously you acquire a bunch of management. Do you feel that you still need to go out and find any sort of missing pieces, or what can you tell us about some of the sort of the deep expertise that you're getting with the management team?
That's a good question. So we're getting a good experienced management team there, a little scientifically oriented. So we're going to bring in more of a commercial orientation, where there's one person there who is responsible for sales and marketing overall, and also has some of the operations responsibilities. So we're going to be working with him, likely give him some increased responsibilities there. The team there is pretty self-sufficient in terms of how they get things done and do the product deliveries and so forth. The big things that we're going to be looking for is we're going to increase our footprint in China. We get some of that with the BT Imaging acquisition. They've got 7 people in China, but we're also going to be looking at more senior people as well in China, because it's frankly, it's the most dominant part of the market for us. And the other thing that we will be looking at is building out the entire team for development of Insight features and also support associated with it. as well. So for that, we'll be building up more executive capabilities in product development. We already have a good team there, but we just need more. And that's likely going to start happening as we start to roll out more and more Insight installations. So I would say you'd see that in 2023 mainly. We have a very well qualified CFO who we promoted from controller a while ago. So we're really strong there. And the board's good. We'll probably be adding to the board as well as we look ahead. And as far as operations management goes, general operations, we're going to need to combine some of that between Vancouver and Sydney. And we haven't decided yet exactly how we're going to do that, but we're going to need to build some additional capabilities in there.
Any redundancies? Are there any areas that you see overlapping that you can cut costs?
Yeah, I don't need two CEOs. And I'm not. I'm staying in my position.
Gotcha.
So there'll be within the team there. We'll see some attrition with. I'm just thinking. Primarily, I think in the sort of the more scientific aspects of things. So people shouldn't worry about that. It's not going to mean there's going to be a loss there. But some of the very senior people have decided that they'll help with the transition, but then they'll move on. So we've done our due diligence, and the next level down, we'll be promoting them into more decision-making roles in that area. And with respect to other aspects on cost cutting, of course, there's some redundancies in systems and in some of the support, but a lot of this, frankly, should get taken up with growth as well anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, some more questions here. Can you speak about the cost savings you've seen with the Insight trials?
We haven't seen anything that I would describe as something where we're saying, okay, so we'll publish this in a paper at this point. And that's simply because of the state of where we're at with respect to the trials themselves. What I can say is what we've seen with the most advanced customer that we have with this is that what they're really excited about and looking for is being able to reduce or even eliminate their need to do manual runs or operations when they are trying to track a problem down, but they can't quite pin it down intuitively. So the big thing there isn't so much a question of exactly how many dollars are they going to save on that. It's a little more intangible. When they do these special operations, they don't trust the results. And oftentimes they try to take corrective actions based on them and nothing happens. So what we're doing with them is we're saying, okay, let's sit down and let's kind of work out, the base case or the control case for this, which is today. And then as we get more of these things coming up where you could use Insight, then we'll be able to start ascribing imputed value to these things in dollar terms as well. So that hasn't all come to the point where we've got a big enough data set yet, because due to some slowdowns when they had the big Shanghai lockdowns, like there was about a month and a half of lost time, we've been moving along quickly after that, but we're still getting their operators fully trained on how to do all the wafer tracking and so forth that supports the system right now. Having said all that, I would say that they're already asking us for extra features, and some of which actually play into that stickiness and the ecosystem thing I was talking about. Like they want luminescence images from existing systems they have, and they've also asked us to start introducing more features associated with some new process steps they're introducing to improve the efficiency of their products as well. So what we're seeing is good buying signs from them.
And sort of follow on with that, any ideas when you might get either the trial complete or the data that you hope to get to sort of be able to substantiate this?
I would say we're looking, well, if you ask my my engineers, they're saying, oh yeah, well, 2 months. And I sent them an email yesterday saying 2 weeks. So I haven't heard back from them yet. I think they're still in shock. But you know, I would say late September. If it's taking longer than that, it's because people are being too scientific and not focusing right down. So I'll be on top of that.
Gotcha. And how do you see, do you have the opportunity to sort of lead this product into some of your, the BT clients? Or do you need
absolutely.
to trial, or do you just walk in with the
same,
data?
In many cases, same companies, because, we both sell into the top tier companies. R&D, I mean, we'll just carry on as that goes, but it'll enable us to, for the R&D that's academic, it doesn't make that much difference. But for the R&D that's being done by, some of the big players like Longy is one of our customers. It'll, as I said earlier, it'll get us in earlier in their planning processes. But the other thing is that they're getting business in a particular technology called heterojunction technology, which is we're mainly seeing that in Europe and in North America, and that's the next step in solar cell design. So they're getting sales into, for example, a subsidiary of one of Italy's state-owned power companies that has set up heterojunction manufacturing lines. We've never gotten into that, so this is an opportunity for us to leverage the BTI relationship and introduce them to Insight and to all of the other measurement products as well.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the same thing in Germany, and also, to a degree, not necessarily the same technology, some work they're doing in the United States as well, where actually our location in Vancouver will, I think, have some benefits in terms of being able to facilitate travel much more easily than getting from the United States to Australia and vice versa.
Right. Gotcha. And provided that everything goes well in this trial, when do you foresee a commercial order? Like, what's sort of the next step if everything goes well in this trial?
We're already planning the commercial activities with the first user in China of Insight, and so I haven't really gotten into it with them much, because we want to get a little bit further in establishing the value with them. So I would see that starting late this month and moving in around the same time as we conclude the trial. With the second one that I said we were working on, they already asked us for pricing. We sent it to them. They didn't blink. So that doesn't mean that somebody isn't going to start trying to grind us in the future. But this is an indication they're serious in terms of buying it if it works out for them. So we would see that. We haven't actually planned the timing yet, because we're just still working on getting the evaluation agreement worked out and signed with them. But I would expect that we would start that again, probably in the September timeframe, and move that through October and November with them, and then we would see what business arises from it.
Gotcha. Okay, so I've got a question here that says, do you still support the use of Insight at the site of the original trial customer?
So with that customer, it was an interesting situation. They had a big management change there around the time we were wrapping things up. Plus, they had started making major investments of money and also all their people's time in a complete change of technology, the cell technology. So with that, we got what we were looking for out of it, as we said in our press release. But the thing there is also in a place where we couldn't go at all. We had no people. At least in China, we got field service technicians. And so we were doing everything remotely with them. So with all that, we said, hey, what we'll do is we'll come back at a later time when we can be on site and we can work, you know, this out. They were saying they wanted a few other things to move forward after they've done their big technology change. And we didn't make a commitment to put them into the product, but they are in the roadmap. So basically, we're going to come back to them later. The reason why, you know, we didn't push that a little harder at the time is they were really a technology test bed for us. And the second customer who we saw starting to sort of yank our arm more and more on this is about 10 times their size. So in terms of resource allocation, I made the decision, let's make sure that we focus on this one in China, which is bigger. And, you know, we actually can get people there. I've doubled the number of people there from 1 to 2. And that's still not enough. So, you know, this is just, you know, tactical decision making.
Gotcha. So the question here now is, when do you expect the BT deal to close? When do you expect the private placement to close?
Thursday.
Thursday. There you go.
August 12th.
A couple days. Yeah. So a couple days away. Fantastic. Yeah. And then the last question I've got here says, do you also have the idea to do a roadshow to European producers?
Yes, I will be doing that probably later, like in the fall. I've spoken to a number, and I have basically, you know, got good feedback from them. I have to say, you know, it varies depending on people's positions with respect to their other investments in this current market. But definitely there's interest, and I will be following up with that.
Fantastic. Okay, so I do have one last question. I lied here. Gordon, I trust the news released by the Biden-Harris administration launching new solar initiatives could be good for you. Is your equipment used in plants that supply the U.S. with solar panels?
So there are no plants that supply solar panels of the nature that we sell our products for in the U.S., which is a shame. There were some companies like Solar World, which is a German company that set up a plant near Portland, Oregon. SunPower, although they did their manufacturing in the Philippines, but all these companies have really not thrived, and in some cases have gone bankrupt. Sneva would be another one, and Evergreen Solar. The focus in the U.S. was on thin film, and there was one company that's been very successful and is one of the top 10 suppliers in the world for solar products, and that's First Solar, based in Arizona. So it's a different technology, and our current products are not really suitable for use with how they do their manufacturing. However, you know, I think what we'll be doing is taking another look at that. You know, there have been some discussions, I know, with BT Imaging, with First Solar. I really can't say anything about that specifically because of non-disclosure. But, you know, the main thing here is that there is an increasing investment in this heterojunction technology I mentioned before, which does use crystalline solar wafers and is amenable to insight and also to our measurement instruments. In fact, they're installed and running and being used in a production line for heterojunction technology, and also for the capabilities of the BT imaging products as well. So, you know, this is really what we're looking for, is that getting into that part of the market, and also into other more advanced technologies beyond the current mainstream technologies, which are starting to come into play.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, Gordon, we're about to wrap up here. What's your key message? What do you want to make sure everybody really understands here before we leave?
Well, I think the main thing is, first of all, is that, and you know, from the very early days of the company, the intention has been to build a complementary suite of products that work together, and Insight is the platform for that. What BT Imaging brings is a top brand. Like they are the top brand in their field, and So there's reputation, there is, these profitability, sales, and embedded base. So from an acquisition perspective, what this does is this supercharges our ability to move forward on that vision. The other thing is that this is not just the end for the company. Like, we're not just going to sit around and say, okay, let's bring this together and build more value add around it and so forth. There are many different steps in different parts of the value chain in solar cell manufacturing, and also within wafering and even silicon ingoting and polysilicon production as well, and ultimately in panels. Our intention over time, as we build the business, and is to combine organic growth and also smart strategic acquisitions of the right pieces of the overall tool set, much the same way that companies like KLA did in the semiconductor industry, and MKS Instrument has done and did recently with photon control, and also other companies like Honeywell when they acquired MeasureX for the pulp and paper industry. And you can see this even in other industries that have nothing to do with manufacturing widgets as well. So this is a step on the way. It's a big step. It's transformational for Aurora. The BT Imaging team and their the research and development that went into the products before they were spun out from the University of New South Wales, really think that's going to help us build mass, build capability, address a larger range of things, all the way from R&D to volume production. And just watch us.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've been speaking with CEO Gordon Deans of Aurora Solar. Symbol on the Venture Exchange is ACU. Now, Gordon, if anybody wants more information specifically about participating in the private placement, what's the best way they can contact the company?
The best bet is Jake Boma, who's on the call, I believe. Yes, he is. So on my slides, on the last slide, Trevor, if you could just put that up, you'll see contact information for Jake.
Perfect. We'll make sure Trevor throws that up. And yeah, if there's anybody that needs that information, can't find it, you can reach out to us here at Small Cap Discoveries or paul@brizio.com. There we go. There's contact information for Jake. So feel free, if you're interested in participating in the financing or you have more questions about the company, please contact the company at the details below. And good luck with the acquisition. Exciting times for the business. Gordon, as always, it was great to catch up, and we certainly look forward to catching up with you again in the future here.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Paul. And thanks everyone for attending, including, I noticed some of the BT Imaging people are on. So thank you for joining. Appreciate it. And yeah, we're really looking forward to the coming months and the long-term development of the company and the industry as well. Really important for all kinds of reasons for the entire world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks again. Bye for now.
All right. Thank you.